Welcome everyone to our webcast today, Getting Started with Model States in Autodesk Inventor. I'm pleased to pass things over now to our presenter, Jennifer. The floor is yours.
Hello everyone, and thanks for taking the time to join me today. As you all know, we're going to be focused on model states. So I just have kind of 4 high-level objectives that I want to start with just to kind of tell you where this webcast is going to go today. First off, spend a little bit of time just understanding some of the uses for model states, and really throughout the whole presentation, I'm going to be talking about the uses, so you'll see a lot of that throughout. We're going to learn to create model states in both parts and assembly files. We're going to look at focusing then as well on substitute model states and how you can use those to simplify your assembly design specifically. And then finally at the end, and this probably will be the shortest topic, is just how we can leverage those model states in your drawings and your presentation files. So with that, I'm going to get started. So as many of you know, and the reason why you signed up for this webcast today is that model states is brand new functionality within Inventor 2022. So it has multiple uses. I've bulleted a few of them here, and many of you probably even have more that you're anxious to try this out on. So first off, I've got some images along the bottom on the left, just part files. So it's really great for designing and configuring multiple versions of a part file or an assembly file. So to represent maybe different product configurations, colors, sizes, those types of things. As well, documenting maybe your manufacturing stages with controlling kind of feature level display. Simplifying, and the next 2 bullets are kind of more maybe focused more around the assembly side of things, and when you work with really large assemblies, you can really look at using model states to help simplify the display of your assembly for maybe making your design work a little bit easier. And then performance, so helping to improve retrieval times with your large assemblies. I'm going to do some demonstrations with assemblies, and they're very small assemblies, and they're done on purpose so that it can be manageable in a presentation. But definitely think on the large scale when you start looking at your own company assemblies. And then also in terms of model simplification, model states can be used as kind of a starting reference point for that. So model states, the introduction of model states within Inventor is meant it's kind of twofold, and you'll see some differences in your Inventor. So first off, it's replacing the level of detail functionality. So you'll no longer see level of detail within Inventor 2022. In addition to that, it's providing an alternative to iParts and iAssemblies. So level of detail is completely gone, but model states and iParts are kind of mutually exclusive. You can choose to use one or the other. With 2022, the model state functionality is enabled by default. So that is the preference or the default with all of the Autodesk templates, that type of thing. But you can enable iParts and iAssemblies, in which case then model states are just turned off. So first question I have gotten from students is, okay, but I have data from previous versions. So let's say Inventor 2021, 2020, how is those files going to be affected when I start to open those in 2022? So I've kind of have 2 bullets here, one kind of with different scenarios. So the first one is, if your old parts have no iParts or no iAssemblies existing in them at all already, model states is just going to be enabled. No problem, you're going to see the functionality, and those LOD reps, if you have any level of detail representations in your model, they're going to be converted to model states. So you're actually going to have some default model states in those models as soon as you open them into 2022. The other scenario is, if you do have iParts and iAssemblies in those previous models, they are going to be there still. Model states is not enabled. Your default is always going to be to iParts and iAssemblies. Nothing's going to change in that functionality. And if you do have also level of detail representations, instead of converting those to model states, they convert those to design views. So all of those LODs are over in design views now. Okay, so those are kind of the 2 scenarios that you will see working with older data. So let's say now you have older data and you want to convert that over into model state functionality. You like the way that's working, you see better benefit for yourself. The process as of now, and I'm sure this is questions Autodesk is getting constantly, is how do I convert those iParts and iAssembly tables back to, or not back, but forward to model states. And unfortunately, it is a manual process. You do, though, if you actually open the spreadsheet for your iParts and iAssemblies, that's a spreadsheet file. Model states also uses spreadsheet files. So you can look at modifying manually the spreadsheet files. What's really key here is that the spreadsheet syntax is different between the two of them. So you might have some find and replaces to do in terms of the wording. I can't think of the two terms right now off the top of my head, but for example, like when you suppress features inside of iParts and iAssemblies and model states, compute and suppress, and one might be, add, remove. I can't remember the two words, but they are different words that are used. So you definitely have to do some manual work in that table. So in terms of creating model states and configuring kind of all those attributes, it's not done in a big dialog box like it was in the iPart and iAssembly functionality. It's actually pretty slick and pretty easy to use. And you're really just manipulating the model as you go. I've got a model state, or sorry, a model browser shown on the right-hand side here. You can see the model state node at the top. And this is where you're going to find all your model states right in the browser. And then you can go and add and activate, that type of thing. In terms of creating them, I'm going to show you all of these different methods to kind of manipulate those files. But ultimately, you're suppressing, you're unsuppressing, you're modifying iProperties, you're assigning materials, you're modifying parameter values, dimension sizes, that type of thing, modifying constraint offsets. So all of the types of things that you did in iParts as well, but you're doing it directly interfacing with the model. And then the last one, just before we finish up here, it's really important to rename your model states properly. Always something descriptive so you can, easily identify what it is. They also have implemented the link. It used to be link level of details. Now it's link model state. So to use that functionality, you certainly have to make sure that the naming convention, your syntax, all of that is the same throughout your model in any kind of subcomponents. So definitely renaming, pay attention to that as you're creating these. And finally, this is more of a caution. I am certainly not a vault expert, and certainly you can ask me some questions about this. I can't handle those today, but I will pass it on to a vault expert on our team, and we can get those answers to you. But it's certainly something to think about. If you're using a vault in your environment, model states are stored differently. So with an iPart or an iAssembly, they store the iParts and files actually as all multiple files separately. With model states, though, they do store them as a single file inside of your vault. So there is some vault integration functionality that you need to have available in order to see all of the data within those model states, and that needs to include items. So from what I understand, not everyone always sets up items, but that is something that is required if you're going to be using model states and wanting to actually see all the part data within that. And then if you do require to have separate files managed and released, you certainly would want to consider sticking with the iParts and iAssemblies. As I said, I'm not a vault expert. There is help within the Autodesk help files. That I have just a string of words here, and this is actually an article that does talk about this. So certainly you can screen grab this this page and take a look at that information in your Vault Help documentation. So with that, I want to flip over into Inventor, and we're going to do a little demonstration. So hopefully this will teach you a little bit about how we can create our model state. So I have a really simple file created. If you're familiar with some of our Ascent training material, you know, it probably looks pretty familiar to you. It's pretty straightforward, but I think that's the best way to make this easy to learn. So you can see over in the model browser, I have the model states node, and this is the new node active for all 2022 files. Inside of that, I have a master model state, and you can see with the check mark beside it, that's currently what is active. So that's created by default. It represents the entire model as designed. For assemblies, there's also a subfolder, and this allows you to kind of separate out substitute model states. So I mentioned that as one of the objectives we're going to be talking about today, and I will cover that in the next section. So we'll cover that in a few minutes. I'm going to flip over now into a part file. So this is simply a part that is available, or is one of the parts within that assembly that I just showed you. And again, you can see there's a model states tab at the top. This node contains all the model states. And again, it also has a master model state that's been created. There's no substitutes here. This is not functionality that is available at the assembly level. So here we are here. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to start my, my model states by creating some inside of my part file. So I'm going to right click right on the node here and click new. And it's going to generate a new model state. Perfect. New. So I mentioned renaming. This is super important. And I'm going to rename these. There we go. Vice. I'm going to be really original here and call it Vice Short, Vice Medium, and Vice Long. So like I had mentioned, make sure your syntax, your spelling are going to be correct. It looks good for me, so I'm happy with how that looks. So right now, if I flip and make any one of these active, you can see that there's no change between them, and that's because we haven't actually configured any attributes yet. So I'm going to start with my Vice Short, and I'm going to actually just make this a little shorter, pretty obvious. I'm going to go up to the parameters dialog box. And you can see I have a parameter called length here. I'm going to go in and just modify this value to, let's say, 164. And you can see that that shrunk up a little bit there. My Vice Medium, I'm going to actually leave that the size, the default size. And Vice Long, I am going to make a change here. So with this one, instead of going into the parameters dialog box, I want to show you that you can also make any of your dimensional changes directly on your model. So here I just showed dimensions to that base feature, and I'm going to go in here and make a change to the size here. And once I update my model, you can see how that gets a little longer. So now I have a short version, I have a medium version, and a long version. Okay. So I'm going to go back just to the short version here. I'm just going to now make some more changes. So the first one I did was dimensional changes, changing to the parameters. Next, I want to change some of the feature geometry. So in this short version of the model, I want to remove the holes. So I don't need any kind of anchoring holes here. So I'm going to make a change to the model in this configuration. So to start off, actually, I want to show you one other thing here. Right now, you can see there's a little pencil adjacent to the Vice Short, and this is setting your scope editing. So which model states are going to be affected by the change. I'm going to actually enable this one up here associated with the node. And what that does is it toggles on pencils for all of the model states. So I'm going to show you how this affects the model. So you really need to pay attention to the editing scope. So I'm going to go down here now and just suppress this hole. And you can see the hole has been removed, just like we anticipated. I'm going to flip now over into Vice Medium. And you can see the hole is also removed from this model. In addition, in Vice Long, it's the same thing. So based on my current editing scope, it's changed all of my model states. This actually wasn't my design intent. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on my holes again. And you can see they're back here. And because my editing scope was on, it's changed it in all of them. I'm going to go back to my short version, and I'm going to toggle off that scope. So now you can see the pencil is only available for short. So now when I go in here, I can suppress the holes here, and medium still has its holes, and the long one also still has its holes. So that's exactly what I expected. What I also want to do here is I actually want to make a dimensional change for this longer one. Let's say I want my anchoring holes just maybe to be a little bit bigger. So I'm going to change the size of those holes to 12 millimeters. And you can see they've gotten bigger. So I have a configuration of long, which is got holes a little bit larger. Medium has the original size holes, and the short version has no holes. So you can see how I've made kind of those changes to the configuration. Within a part file, you can also make changes to the model's material. So I'm just going to do a couple changes here. For Vice Short, I'm going to change this one, let's say to, let's go copper cast. So you can see it's just a different color now. It's going to help me identify, that we are in this short version quickly without much problem. Vice Medium, I'm going to change this one maybe to, let's go cast iron maybe. So it's a little darker. And for the Vice Long, I'm just going to leave that the default, which is just the cast steel. So you can see how we have the 3 different materials now assigned to each of those model states. So again, back with Vice Short, I'm starting with this one. And now I want to show how you can modify the iProperties to the file. So each one of these can have different properties. So to access iProperties, you want to make sure that the actual model state is active, because if you make changes to the master, that's changing the default one. So you certainly want to make sure you've got the right one active. Right-click iProperties, and I'll bring that dialog box over. On the project tab, I'm going to, again, be original here and just call this Vice Short. And you can see that I can click OK, or actually I'll apply that and close it. So now that model state has a unique iProperty compared to the master. So I could go through and activate each one of these and go into iProperties. But what I want to show you here is, I mentioned it earlier, it's the spreadsheet. So I'm going to open the spreadsheet. I'm going to confirm that I want the spreadsheet open. And it's just opened on my other screen here. I'm going to pull that over, and you can see it's just a straightforward table. I'm going to pull out some of these columns here just to make them a little bit more readable. And you can see that basically, just like iProperties, or sorry, iParts and iAssemblies, it actually provides a column for each of those customizable fields. So initially, we started by customizing the lengths. We added holes or removed them. So, there's the terminology there for iParts, or sorry, model states. It's compute and suppress. The values for the holes, the material properties has been assigned here. And then this is what I want to edit now. So you can see that if you look at Vice Short, that has had the custom iProperty assigned, but the other 2 still have the original. So I'm going to modify that directly in here. So it's a little bit easier than accessing the iProperties dialog box every time. In addition to making these changes, I can go through and add a whole new row here. So I could add a 6th row, customize all the values here, and create a brand new model state as well. So it's certainly a table that could be valuable to you. And this is where I was mentioning as well, you can open this and then can work with iProperties, or sorry, the iParts or iAssemblies, and merge them together to try and customize and try and create your model states manually. Okay, so now I've kind of customized this part as much as I've wanted to. I have, the different model states here. I'm going to hit save on this part, and I'm going to return back into my assembly. And you can see my assembly needs an update, which is obvious. I've made a change to that part. So you can see how now it no longer needs an update. Now, I'm going to expand out this base component. This is the one that we just modified, and you can see I can expand out, and you can see all the model states that are active in this. But right now, I don't have any model states at the top level that are pulling in those part level model states. It's simply activating the master. So what I need to do now is create model states at the top level. So I'm going to create again 3 different model states and modify those again, their names, be consistent by short. Medium. Long. So right now you can see I have vice short active, the little check mark is beside it. Now what I have to do is I have to decide and assign any subcomponents model states to it. So all I have to do that is expand out that and select vice short. And now you can see that vice short is now, you can see the orange, and that's why I kind of changed the material to make it really obvious that we're doing it right. And you can see how it's shortened up a little bit. I'm going to activate vice medium and do the exact same thing. So activate the part level vice medium and vice long and do the exact same thing. In a minute, I'm going to show you another way that you can do this using your link model states, but I wanted to also show you can actually do it manually and just select. So just drawing your attention here with this vice long, once it's activated, you can see right at the end here, I have a bit of interference. That component, that screw subassembly here, is actually interfering with the base. So it's not long enough. So what needs to happen is that I actually have to have some model states within this screw subassembly. So now I'm just going to go and expand this out and just show you what needs to be done here. So you can see I have no model states for this subassembly. However, I did create one prior to this class to just show you that, be a little faster, and that I do have some model states down here for this part file. Now, you can see it might be a little tricky, but they're grayed out. And basically what that's meaning is that within a subassembly, you cannot activate the model state. So right now I'm at the top level assembly, and this is a subassembly, and I cannot control the model states underneath and activate or deactivate them. Even so, if I right click on the model states for the subassembly, you can see there's no new button here. So this is intended functionality. This is the way that it works. So now in order to create model states within the subassembly, I am going to have to open this file and work directly in this file. So at this point, again, I need to do a few, creating some new ones. I'm going to create 3 here. The time-consuming part of this demonstration, but it certainly shows you exactly how this works. So vice short. All of your model state names don't have to be the same. I am doing that to be super clear as I'm demonstrating this. I keep track of it, so it's easy for you to see. So now I have the 3 different model states. I'm going to activate the short one to start with, and you can see as I previously mentioned, I had previously created these down here. Now, last time, so in the top level assembly, I went manually through and activated each one, but now I want to show you that other option, so the linking. So I have vice short active. I'm going to pull this down here and select linked model states. And again, over my other screen. And then this dialog box comes up. So this is looks the exact same as the link level of details, but now because LODs are gone, this is the functionality within model states. So what I'm doing is I have vice short active, and for that, I want to link up any other vice shorts that are in this model. So I only have one inside this component, but if there was others, then it would pull in all of them. So this is, if you have multiple components that you're going to be activating, this is where you really see the benefit of this functionality. Okay, so it might have been a little hard to tell, but that opened up that vice short, which is a little bit shorter. With medium, I also want to link in the medium version. And then with long, do the exact same thing. Oops, not the parameters dialog box. Nice long. And you can see that one was a little bit more obvious. It jumped size-wise. Okay, so I have all of those done. I'm just going to activate the master here, click Save, and close this. I don't need this one open now. I'm going to return back to the very top. And again, here now, again, I have to link again. So now that I have some model states within this, this subassembly, I do have to link them again to be sure that they're matched up. So I'm going to activate my short. And when I activate this long, the last one here for long, you'll notice that, so before I activate it, notice the interference. Now, when I use vice long, you can see that it's bringing in the longer version of that, that screw component. So that's, those are kind of like the high level introduction of, using parameters to drive your model states, using your material properties, using iProperties, material properties, all of those types of things to customize those model states to derive kind of the different configurations. I also mentioned one of the uses of model states was for simplification. Now, again, this part or this assembly is super simple, but I can still give you an example here. So I'm going to create a new model state. And what's important here when I create this new model state is that I start back with the master. If I was to create a model state with vice long active, it would create it with this version. And I actually don't want that. I want to create it using my master model state. And I'm going to create a new version. And with that, I'm going to rename this to something, again, descriptive, screws suppressed. And I'm just going to go in and suppress some features, components. I'll simply go in and click suppress, there we go. And now they're removed from that version. So in a really large assembly, taking out hardware this way is a great way to lighten your assemblies, and then you can work on using that to open your models and design in your models that way. Just before we get back to the presentation, I just want to open the bill of materials. And this just shows you now that for the set screw and the other ANSI screw here, both of their values are showing as 0, which is to be expected for that model state. Okay, so I think that covers everything that I wanted to show you with kind of creating the parts and assemblies. Karina had mentioned that some of this material has been included with some of our Inventor standard materials. So that demonstration I actually just gave you is an exercise. So you certainly wanted to practice, that would be an option. I'll tell you the books that they're available in at the end of the presentation. So the next objective with model states that I wanted to cover is around substitute model states. And this is available within Assemblies. So if you remember, that assembly node had a substitute folder. So the folder really is more for organization. It's created so that they automatically get put in there so that you kind of, could easily recognize that they're a little different than maybe the configured model states that you've created. So it's just for organization. So in terms of substituting model states, it enables you to replace a kind of a complex component with a simpler one. So this is a pretty simple model here. Again, it's fan blades. The blades are replaced with just a standard single part. So it's a little lighter. It's not giving it away kind of any IP, but it's telling you that space claim for those fan blades. Any substitute contains kind of all of the bill of material information that normally would be associated with the assembly, as well as any physical information as well. So if you're familiar with the shrink wrap functionality back in 2021, they leveraged that functionality that's now actually named Simplify with this. So in terms of creating kind of that substitute model state, you open an assembly. If you want to, you can create a simplified model state. So just like we did, maybe removing the screws in the demo. So you can create a simplified model state. And then what you want to do is create a new substitute model state. And in that, you have kind of three options. The derive assembly, which is functionality that's been around for years, where you basically are deriving a single part out of the entire assembly. You can simplify it, and that's where leveraging any created model states is really nice. So when I say it's optional if you were using the simplify option to derive your substitute model state. And the third is just simply selecting a part file. So there's three different ways you can do this. We use derive assembly. I mentioned that. That's the functionality that's been around for years. You're simply going through with this dialog box, defining how you're going to derive the part file, if it's going to be multi-body, if it's going to be all surface models, that type of thing, picking and choosing which components you're going to include in the derived assembly. Second one, placing an actual part file. So it'd be something that you've already designed that exists on your computer. You can go in and pick the part file. That's probably the way that fan blade would have been done. It would have just been a replace with a new part. And then finally, the simplify method. And this is where I'm going to actually demonstrate now this simplify option. Inside of the training material that we've developed for 2022, it does have an example of both the derive assembly and the select part file. So I chose to use simplify in this demonstration, but there is content on all of them. So with that, again, I'm going to flip back over into Inventor. And with this one, I have another assembly open here, this third assembly here. Again, it's simple, good to actually to demonstrate this functionality. And what I want to do now is just show you that there's some sub-assemblies here. There's there's one sub-assembly called housing. I'm going to open that. And you can see this housing assembly has three different components. I'm going to open this grip as well. So you can see how this geometry was created. It's pretty complex here. And this is just for simplicity. I'm going to simplify this with a model state. So this was the optional method where I'm going to leverage an existing model state to simplify my model with that substitute functionality. So I'm going to name this suppressed and with that, I'm just going to suppress a couple features here. It's more that they're going to look a little different. You can see that the detail is just a little simpler here. Depending on how you modeled this, I could make it even more simple and remove those grooves. Unfortunately, that's not how this model was modeled. So the grooves are not an individual feature on its own. So I'm just going to simplify it by suppressing those two features. I'm going to save that. I don't need this anymore. I'm going to close up the grip. And now in the housing, what I want to do again is create another model state, and that is required in order to activate the grip specifically. I'm going to create again a new model state here. Pressed. Grip features. And I could use the link option, but it's just as easy for me to go through here because I just have one component. I'm just going to go and activate this one. So now you can see that it's activating when this model state is available. It's removing kind of the detail on that grip. If I go back to master, it shows it again. Okay, so I've simplified out my my assembly so that I have those two versions. Now what I want to do is I'm going to activate the master here. And this is where I'm going to create that new substitute. So I'm basically creating a model state that is going to substitute out that housing. So right now it's got 3 components with a single component. So I'm going to right click on the node at the top here, the model state node, and I'm going to create new substitute. And remember I showed you the 3 different options. I'm going to choose simplify. Okay. So I mentioned briefly that the shrink wrap functionality has been replaced with this simplify functionality, and this is the dialog or the properties panel that's available now for shrink wrap as well. So if you haven't used shrink wrap yet, this is a good introduction to what you're going to be seeing in 2022 for shrink wrap. And if you look up actually on the browser, or sorry, on the ribbon here, you can see this simplify command. That's the replacement for shrink wrap within that simplification panel. So once this is available here, you can see that the panel is broken into a bunch of different areas, and it enables you to kind of go through now and customize how I'm going to simplify this assembly down to a single part file to represent that geometry. So I mentioned to you that I didn't necessarily have to create a model state, but I did that to use that as the starting point for this. So you can see if I go in here to model states, I can go in and say, I'm going to base this simplification on this existing model state that I just created. So it makes it a little bit, it jumps me forward to simplifying it. In addition to that, I'm going to just expand out the replace envelope. I'm not replacing with any envelopes here. I'm going to not need to make a change there. I can go in and exclude components. So this is where I could actually choose to remove a component. It's not a huge deal here, but I am going to show you how I can do this. I just have to activate this field, and there's a ring just down here, and I'm just going to remove that ring in the simplified model. It's geometry-wise, it's not going to save me anything, but I just want to show you how that can be done. That was a part. You can also exclude components. So if this was a larger assembly, you could exclude a whole subassembly. And then this is a really good one, selecting all occurrences. So in an example where you wanted to remove components, like all the screws in something, you could pick one, but all the occurrences of it would be removed if that was enabled. And then removing features. And this is where you can go through and you can simplify this even further by removing specific holes, by range, by all holes, and customize it that way. Fillets, chamfers, pockets, kind of you can do the same thing. What I wanted to show you here is you can see this is kind of a very short list of the control you have over removing features. This is exactly why I created that model state and used that up in that input panel, because I actually was able to go in and remove the feature that, the crosscuts that were made in that, and that wouldn't have been possible to do with these controls. So I mentioned it's optional, but it's super flexible because it enables you to really customize things with it. So I've done enough customization here. I don't need any more to remove any more features. The output is probably a really important area for you to keep an eye on. The type, this is substitute. And that reason that's grayed out is because we created it through the model state. So it is creating a simplified substitute. There's no changing that. If you actually activate this command up here on the ribbon, you have a couple other options, and I'll quickly show you that when I'm finished. I'm going to change my template just to use my standard metric template. I'm going to assign a custom name here. This is just showing me where it's going to be created. The bill of material is going to be created as a normal bill of materials. And right now it's just going to create it as surface geometry. I'm fine with that. It's really just going to be to simplify this model. And I'm going to click OK. And you can see that it's creating the new substitute. And you can see that I'm still in the assembly and the housing assembly. And now you can see instead of those 3 components, it has now replaced it with that single substitute that I just created. So it's a surface model. You can tell that by the icon associated with it, and that's how I created it. You could create it as a solid as well. It's just the option that I chose. If I go back up into the master, you can see how when the master is activated, you can see the 3 components again. Okay. One of the kind of tricky things here is that I can't rename a substitute model state for some reason with it active. So might just be an issue with the software, but certainly a workaround is just activating the master and renaming it. So you can see I've got it renamed there. So I have the part, the simplified version, and the master. Okay, I'm going to hit save here. Actually, while I'm here, this is another enhancement, and I really like this one because finally they're giving you a save state. So they're giving you some information now on why your file needs to be saved. So you can see that there was an update, model states were updated, there were some user edits, that type of thing. So all of that is now just a little bit more information on what's going on with your save. So I've saved that housing, and again, back into the model state, I need to update my model. And you can see down here, all of those model states all exist down in here. So again, I want to control this from the top level. So I don't need to create a model state in here. A substitute model state. I'm just going to create a model state in here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to activate this substitute housing. So now you can see that, I'm going to name this so I can tell what I've done here. So now you see at the top level, I have a model state that is pulling in that single representation of the subassembly. If I go back into master, you can see the icon now updates to show that it's a subassembly again. I've got all my components separated out. Okay, so this is a new functionality available then to you within the model state functionality. Okay, and now finally, I want to flip back over into the final little bit of my presentation. This won't be too long. I just want to kind of show how you can leverage the use of these model states. So similar to level of details, you can use your model states to open the file directly within an existing model state. So I just kind of have a screen grab here. You can see that you still leverage the options button at the bottom of the open panel, and then you can select your model state that you want to open. This certainly is an excellent strategy for opening your large assemblies in terms of simplifying them. This is available both in open, or if you're also placing components into an assembly, you can place a model state version of the part file, or sorry, an assembly file too. Within your drawings, you can choose the model state that's going to be represented in a view. And additionally to that, your parts lists, any parts lists that you show on your model referencing that drawing view will reflect the model state of the view that you've, the parent view that you've selected. And if you wanted to create a table showing all of the configurations that were made, so this is a pretty simple example. It's just showing my small, medium, and long vise. And you can see I've added a table here that shows the material, the length, the mounting holes, the existence of them, and the size of those mounting holes. And that's just done with a general table. And then finally, in presentations, it's the exact same thing as drawing. You can use model states to represent scenes within your presentations. This might be a great example of showing your manufacturing stages. So you could showcase that within your presentations using the different model states with that. Now I'm going to do one last demonstration, just quickly show you a few things with opening the files and that type of thing. So you can see here I have the screws suppressed turned on here. I'm going to hit save here. So I'm saving it in this configuration. I'm going to close this now. and I'm going to open it again. So I'm going to go in, navigate to that vise, and I'm going to select that options panel here. Before I actually make a change though, I want to show you, because I saved that model with the model state screws suppressed active, you can see that by default, this actually would have opened it that way. So that's a really nice functionality so that, you know, avoids you making that mistake in terms of opening it. If you know you always want to open it with a certain model state active, save your model with it active and close it, and then it'll be available to you. And you can open it that way. So I'm going to open this so that the screws are suppressed. And if we look in here, you can see the model state. Actually, I haven't pointed this out yet, but you can tell that a model state is active without opening the actual node here by looking at the brackets after the part name. So the assembly name. So there's a bracket saying it's the screws suppressed version. You might not want to have that functionality exist like that, where you would prefer it to always open the master. I'll just quickly show you here under the applications menu. So in application options, file tab, file open. In here, you can set the model state. Right now, it's last active. So meaning the last one, the version or how it was saved. You could go through here and you could change that to master so that it automatically opens the master unless you specifically go in and change it otherwise. I'm going to leave it like that. I like it like that myself personally. Now I want to just quickly create a drawing. I'm going to right click on the assembly, create a drawing view. And click the default template. I'm not too concerned about how this is going to look. And it's created it with the default model state there. What I want to do is pull this over here, and you can see because it was active at the in the assembly, it automatically picks up the screwed suppressed version. Can't really tell a difference there, so I'm going to show how I can flip this over to vice long, and you can see very, you know, subtly it got a little larger there. So this is the vice long version. So I'm going to click OK, and you can see how it's brought that in. Let's go in and quickly create a parts list. It's pretty tiny, but I'll zoom in here. And you can see right now with this vice long, there's a quantity associated with all of them. So you remember I didn't actually turn off any components with that. If I go back into my master view here and change that to screws suppressed, remember this was the one that I actually did turn off some of the components. Yes, I'm going to replace. Now, if I zoom in, you can see that those screws now have a 0 quantity to match up with the version of the model state that I have shown. Now, what I just quickly want to do is show you the general tables. So here's my vice short model, just the part file. Again, I'm going to create a new drawing. And let's just look at the top here just to kind of show some varying sizes. I'm going to click OK, create a second. And I clicked too quickly there, so I'm going to change that to my top view, rotate it so that I can kind of align it a little better there. You can see. So I've created just kind of 2 versions. I could create a 3rd version there as well, just to show the long configuration. I will flip that, rotate it, choose OK. And you can see kind of I have the 3 configurations. So now to show kind of the sizing or all the customizable parameters, I'm going to create that general table, reference it on one of them, and I'm going to go into column chooser. Right now, I need to add which configurable items that I want to add to my table. So I'm just going to add all of them. For now, click OK. and add my table. So now I have a general table that is basically showing, hey, this is the master, this were the configurations for that. There's my vice short, my vice medium and long, and all of the settings that you have in there. I can go in and edit this again. Go into the column chooser, let's say remove, I don't need the part number. And you can see how it simplifies that up as well. And you can use all of the functionality maybe to rename things and change your titles on some of the columns to customize it if you wanted to. So that pretty much sums up what I wanted to chat with you about today. I'm going to just return back here and just quickly go over the objectives to show that we've kind of covered everything. So we started with kind of an understanding of model states, and I certainly hope that I've explained it well to you, that you can see some uses with it for your companies. We've created some parts, we created some assemblies, we used the linking, and we manually also activated model states in subcomponents to kind of show you how that all works. We use substitute model states as well to simplify the housing in our mechanical pencil. And then finally, we just did a kind of a quick demonstration on the drawing side of things. And in terms of presentation, it works, very much the same way, where you're presented with a dialog box to select which model state you need to activate to show in your scene. So I kind of briefly mentioned throughout that the content has been updated in our Ascent training material. So this year we released an Inventor 2022 update class. It was focused kind of on a 2-year span, so 2020 and 2021, but model states took up a good portion of that class. So there's a whole chapter dedicated to that. It's got both parts and assemblies together in that one section. So, if you want to learn that, that might be the best training guide to look at. It also, will show you about the simplify and the shrink wrap, the changes moving away from shrink wrap as well. So it's a great guide to look at to get your handle on 2022. With advanced part and advanced assembly, we've moved model states into that as well. That chapter that is in the update class was divided out though, so that the part level model states is in the part class and the assembly level is in the assembly class. So it is divided into the 2 classes. And then with the advanced part, advanced part, there's certainly been some changes to the order of that course. So if you are an instructor, I would certainly make sure next time you're going to teach that class that you review that guide, because there were some changes in order to kind of fit the model state stuff in there. With assembly, it wasn't so significant because it was replacing the level of detail functionality. So that chapter kind of completely came out and was replaced with model states. So that kind of sums it up. I hope that I gave you a good introduction on model states.